Okay, so we're going to start talking about genetics and what that is. So when we're starting genetics, we have a lot of vocab that we need to know. But what we're going to start with first is I want you to start thinking of some characteristics that you have in common with your mom or your dad. So such things as hair color, eye color, your smile, maybe your nose, do you have a widow's peak, different characteristics that you can think of that maybe your mom or your dad have that you also have. And so all of these qualities or traits are what we call traits. Okay? All of the qualities and characteristics are what we call traits. So the definition of traits is that it's a distinguishing quality that can be passed from one generation to another. And so some examples are like we just kind of discussed. Those hair color, your eye color, maybe your nose, the shape of your lips, shape of your face, how tall you are. There's many different characteristics or traits that we have in common that we look at. Another vocab is that we have heredity. So it is the passing of traits from one parent to its offspring. Offspring meaning baby. So here an example, you have a mom and a dad, and they both have gray hair, and they pass that gray hair down to their baby cat, and so now their baby cat also has gray hair. And then we have genetics, which is just the study of the heredity or how traits are passed from one parent to their offspring. And so you may have a doctor who studies genetic disorders, or someone who studies what happens when genes do not get copied correctly. So there's a man that kind of progressed genetics, and his name is Gregor Mendel, and he's considered to be the father of genetics. And so he worked with pea plants to be able to study heredity, and he looked at different pea plant heights and what happened when they were pollinated together. And so he did 3 different experiments with the pea plant. So the first experiment that he did, he took a tall pea plant and cross-pollinated it with a tall pea plant. So he used 2 tall pea plants, and he was able to get a tall pea plant. Then in his second one, he took a short pea plant, and they cross-pollinated it with a short pea plant. And so again, he was able to do the same height, which is a short pea plant. So now he's used both of the same heights. So he decided that he was going to cross-pollinate different heights. So in his third experiment, he took a tall pea plant and he cross-pollinated it with a short pea plant. And he got a tall pea plant. And so this is pretty important because it helps us kind of uncover and understand kind of what you inherit. So he was able to see that the tall trait is actually dominant over the short trait. So he was able to see that there are dominant genes and then there are short recessive genes. So we have this thing in our body, and we've kind of talked about it before, DNA. So DNA is a long, thin strand that contains the heredity information that makes you up. And it's found in the nucleus. And so in this DNA, there are small sections of genes on a chromosome. And so the genes are what give the information about a trait. So the chromosome is the rod-shaped structure that makes up the DNA, and it carries the information that controls your inherited characteristics or your traits. So if we go back to genes, so you get 2 copies of genes. So you're going to get one from your mom and you're going to get one from your dad. And so those genes are what make up those chromosomes. And so in those chromosomes, then you're able to see what the trait is going to end up being. So like we talked about before, Gregor Mendel came up with this theory that there were dominant traits. So when we're talking about dominance, we're talking about that it means one form of a trait is going to cover up or mask another form of a trait. And so dominant traits are written with a capital letter. So in his experiment, he wrote it with a capital T for tall. So we also have something called pure dominance, and it's when an organism has two dominant genes for a single trait. So whenever you write a gene, okay, there's going to be two letters. So what this pure dominance is meaning is that I'm going to have my dominant letter was T. I would just have two T's to represent that trait, or that gene. And so that's just the pure dominance, is that all you have is that tall gene, and so you're going to have those two T's. An example is that tall pea plants dominate over the short pea plants, and so the tall pea plant represents as TT, okay, capital T, just like we talked about the pure dominance. Alright, and then we also have recessive genes. So this means that one form of a trait is going to be covered up by another form of a trait. And they're only seen when a trait is recessively pure. So they're going to have two lowercase letters because the gene is often written or is written as a lowercase letter. So an example of a recessive trait is blonde hair. So blonde hair is actually a recessive trait. And so you would have it written, let's say you had B for blonde. It would be lowercase b, to show that it's recessive. So there's hybrid. So this means that an organism has one dominant gene and one recessive gene for a single trait. And so it's often written as a capital and a lowercase letter. So capital T, lowercase t, which is still going to be tall. So the dominant chromosome will dominate over the recessive chromosome. So you will still have a tall pea plant, okay? Because if you have this capital letter, no matter what, it is going to be dominant. Even though there's this lowercase letter which is saying recessive, okay, if you have a capital letter, it is always going to be dominant. Alright, so we have an example here. So capital B is for brown hair, and lowercase b is for blonde hair. So dad has purely dominant brown hair, so capital B, and mom has purely recessive hair, so lowercase b, and the child is a hybrid, so capital B, lowercase b. So he is going to have brown hair. Now, on your notes, it says, if two parents, one pure dominant and one recessive, for a specific trait, have children, what trait will the children express and explain? And so what we're going to do is we're just going to show this through a Punnett square. So what's going to happen is we're going to draw a box that has 4 parts. So when we're talking about the parents, okay, so one is pure dominant. So that means it's going to have capital B. So pure dominant is both the letters are capital. And one pure recessive. So pure recessive means that they both are lowercase. So now all we have to do is we have to take this letter and mix it with this letter here. So you would get capital B, lowercase b. Okay? Then you're going to take this B and you're going to bring it down. So again, I have a capital B, and I'm going to bring this little b over to get a little b. Okay, then I bring this capital B down. I bring this lowercase b over. I have capital B, lowercase b. And then I bring the b down, bring the little b over, and I have capital B, lowercase b. Okay, so it's asking what trait will they have. So they're actually, so if we look, I wonder if I can change this. No. Okay. So if we see here, we have capital B, capital B, and capital B. So, going back from before, okay, that capital B means that it's always going to have that dominant trait. So every single one of these boxes has that dominant trait in it. So their child is going to have that dominant hair color, which is brown. Oh. And the reason this is they are going to have 100% technology. Okay, they're going to have 100% chance of having brown hair. So each one of these boxes makes up 25%. So this one's 25%. This one is 25, this one is 25%, and this box makes up 25%. So if you were to add them all together, it's 100%. So since every single one of them has a capital B, it's 100% brown hair. Okay, this may not make too much sense. Okay, but we're going to do another one. Hopefully it'll make a little bit more sense. All right, so now the next one says if both parents are hybrid, so heterogeneous, for a particular trait, what chance does their first child have of expressing the recessive trait? Okay, so if both of them are heterozygous, so they're both hybrids. Okay, if we look at this, if again we draw our box and we put it in 4 different sections. So if they're heterozygous, they're different, they're hybrid. So they're both going to be that. So I would have a capital B and a lowercase b, and I would have a capital B and a lowercase b. And again, I'm going to have to cross them together now. So I'm going to take this big B down, and I have a big B, and I'm going to bring this B over. So I have 2 big B's. Now I'm going to go down, or across. So I'm going to bring this little B down, and I'm going to bring this big B across. Same thing with here. I'm going to bring the big B down, then I will bring the little b across, and then I bring the little b down, and little b across. So what they're asking is which one is going to have a recessive trait. So again, each one of these boxes is going to give me 25%. So we're looking for recessive. Recessive traits cannot have a capital letter. So the only box that does not have a capital letter in it would be this box right here. So that would mean that they would only have a 25% chance of having recessive traits. Okay. Last is genotype and phenotype. So your teacher should have told you that instead of sexual reproduction, we're going to be doing genotype, and instead of asexual reproduction, you're going to put phenotype. So when we're talking about genotype, it's just talking about the letter representation of a gene. So earlier when we were talking about blonde hair and brown hair, we had the capital B and the lowercase b. Those are your genotypes. It's describing the gene. Okay, and then you have phenotype, which is the actual visible physical appearance of a trait. So it's kind of easy to remember. So if you have the pH in physical, the pH in phenotype, okay, so phenotype is going to be physical. So what do you physically see? Okay, so this would either be the brown hair, or the blonde. Okay, and so that's the difference between the two. Okay, they're not that hard, especially if you can remember the pH and the pH for physical and phenotype. It kind of helps aid in that.